Comrades, that's a bit hard to follow, isn't it? I mean, was that me he was talking about? It's really very humbling indeed, following so many great contributors to this national union, to be standing here and accepting such an honour. I've always felt like it's important to be very active, and it's pretty obvious from that little bit of a story about me that I have been. But I am truly humbled by all of the stories of all of the lives of all of the wonderful people I'm standing with here today. And I'd like to start properly with acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting here today, and to remember something very important about when I first set foot in Tennant Creek, and I was meeting Warramunga people from within 24 hours of first setting foot there. And I think I've told you this story, Cass. I met a lady who has now passed away, Naparula, and it's okay to use her name because she said before she passed away, please keep calling me Bunny. She taught me that there are two very important things that you must remember about being in Warramunga country. One is you need to have your own dog, and within 2 weeks of going to Warramunga lessons, which was the second thing, you must learn to speak our language. She had given me a puppy. Those two things have stayed with me as a lesson about keeping things as simple as you can too, because there are basic and fundamental things about the human rights of those who we are committed to as unionists, as educators, as fighters for those rights of people who do not have the rights that we have all taken for granted being born in Australia. And I think that those things that bind us so strongly together in this room, in our state branches, in the TAFE division, which, by the way, I'm still particularly keen on having an involvement with, because I'm back working part-time a little bit with an NGO where I'm doing some education work with the MPY Women's Council. So I just can't bring myself to read the notes and what I've planned to say. But my kind of union life is not just about getting elected to positions or holding positions and really working hard for the union and having the right and the role to lead and to speak and all those things. It really is, and it should be, about the struggle. And in my life and the great privilege I've had of working alongside people like Bunny Naparula, who, as a woman who was not literate, led the fight against the Muckaty waste dump until almost the day she died. That sort of strength, that sort of commitment to a real struggle that's about saving something that's worth saving is what I've felt all my life as a teacher, as an educator. And by the way, I'm one of those other people who's got Gough Whitlam to thank for having a university education. Without him, I would have been out working on some other job by the time I was 15. I did get a scholarship before he was elected, and I did manage to get a scholarship to be able to go and do Teachers College, but without the university opportunity that was there once Gough Whitlam was elected, I would not be standing here, I don't think, today. I want to go back over just a few very important people who I would like to acknowledge, and some of them are no longer with us, which is very sad. My colleague Jarvis has just mentioned Stephen Polizzo, who is our Vice President of the AEU NT branch. Stephen and his family have been my friends since the moment I met them in Tennant Creek in 1987, and we were having a protest then against a high temperature incinerator for toxic waste, I think it was. But we were unionists together, Stephen and I, and Stephen is there still and fighting, and he is still working as an educator, and I take my hat off to him. I think he's an amazing fella, and I wish he was here. There's a lot of people I'd like to acknowledge, and many of them go back right to that early part years ago, 3 decades ago. But I want to acknowledge in particular some of my federal colleagues as well in the more recent period. And I'm just remembering the intervention and the Little Children Are Sacred report which in our case, as a branch and as a national body, we followed up with the document Education is the Key, which was the work of Michaela Kroneman and others, and of course Pat Byrne, who I think was our president at the time. I'm hoping I'm getting the right titles. The importance of that work and doing that work to research and actually have some real handle on some of the issues in our communities around the Northern Territory was particularly difficult at that time, because on top of that, we were also running the unions, all unions in the whole country were running the Your Rights at Work campaign. So it was one of those incredible pressure cooker years and times of a great deal of stuff happening. I will recall, though, that some of the communities that I was able to visit and bring Michaela Kroneman to were crucial to some of the input that we made with that booklet, and also the crucial input that we could follow up with in lobbying around the needs of those communities where children, some of whom had been removed from their families for reasons of not being cared for adequately or being abused, but also for the whole push we've had over the Gonski funding on individual needs of each child in every school in our part of the world. And those needs are growing, they are not lessening, they are getting much, much higher. And as we all know, we are approaching a period of time where if, for example, if our funding model doesn't change in the Northern Territory drastically, then the gap is widening and widening and widening, and we cannot allow that to happen. One of the other people I would like to particularly acknowledge who is not able to be here, but who has attended our national conference before, is Yalmay Yunupingu from Yirrkala, and her great contribution, I think it was the 2008 conference in Sydney, where Chris Sara and Yalmay made great presentations to the federal body. Yalmay has been an enormous influence on me, and that was partly because she was finishing her studies as a teacher to get the degree with Bachelor College it was then, and in the period she was doing that final year, there were many, many other issues that she was facing, but she has never ever stopped, even though she's been through the sadness and loss of losing her husband, who all of you would know and remember. Like many, many of my friends in the Northern Territory, family is everything, but to lose family makes just such a huge, huge hole in people's lives. But Yalmay has kept going and has made great contributions to our branch of the union and to the rights and furthering the rights of all Indigenous children, but particularly those from her homeland in Arnhem Land. I'd like to particularly acknowledge as well my predecessor, who's with us, Robert Laird. Robert Laird encouraged me to stand as the president of the NT branch, and I thought, I probably can't do that. I've been, too much on the ground, and I've got my nose into the details of things. But thank you, Robert, and thanks to all of my colleagues in the past and currently, who I still want to keep in touch with and work with and do as much as I can with, because, as someone has just said earlier, it is the teacher who can make the difference to the lives of so many. And as unionists and educators and teachers, I hope we can all continue to do that, and also to keep working in solidarity with those who are not as well off as the rest of us here in this room.